It's a big sum. It clearly is a big sum paid out by the employer. Employers have money where employees don't. And although there is no formal admission of liability, because when there's a settlement, that's part of the deal, there is no admission of liability, clearly it goes further than just papers accepting that editors should resign because something's gone wrong. So this has clearly become something that's become corporate responsibility, not personal responsibility. I think there's a real big lesson here, which is that it is very easy, or it can be very easy, for individuals to break into, to buy their way into, to have access to data on the rest of us, ordinary citizens, well-known and not well-known. And it's very difficult for the ordinary citizen to get any comeback. I mean, if you're rich and you can take legal action, or rich and be willing to risk the costs of legal action, then it's one thing. But that doesn't apply to most of the people in the country. And in the new data-centred age, I think there are very big warning bells and very big lessons. There was a lot of information, presumably a lot of it not much use to anybody, as it happens, as in my case, as I understand it, but there was a lot of information. And therefore, we shouldn't presume this was a spur of the moment, one-off, do it over the weekend exercise. People can very easily, and the judge was very clear about this, very easily get into a system so that they can abuse that power here. And I think this is a very, very big warning that there is technologically quite an easy way historically for people to get information on the rest of us, and the courts need to be very, very firm, as the judge was in this case, that they won't stand for it and that people should be severely punished. The important thing is there are civil rights that people have in this country, and then there is the law which makes things criminal offences. I've always throughout my life never asked for special rights of privacy for politicians or government ministers or important people. I'm actually much more concerned about the civil rights of the unknown person who actually has no recourse to the media to say how they've been abused. And therefore whatever I do and other people do should be aimed at making sure that, quotes, ordinary people out of the public gaze, do not have their information interfered with, no matter by how influential or powerful either a private company on the one hand or a public body on the other. In the end, we know that the police decided who they were going to prosecute and with what information. That's concluded. We now know that the 3 other people decided to take civil action successfully, as it turned out. There's a question as to whether this newspaper group or any other newspaper group is liable to other actions. And I guess the lesson of this story is they shouldn't presume, any newspaper organisation, any press organisation shouldn't presume that this is something that will only be dealt with in the criminal courts. It might be dealt with in the civil courts as well. It clearly takes liability one step further than the previous resignation of the editor of the paper. I hope that they have learnt the lesson. I mean, the judge was very clear. He wanted lessons to be learned, and he wanted the message to get out. Now, since then, there hasn't been another prosecution that I'm aware of. Since then, there hasn't been another public complaint of that sort of abuse. But I'm very clear that with more and more people having private information held on them by more and more organisations, the risks are higher. And I hope the lesson of this expose is that there is always corporate as well as individual personal responsibility.